I mean, yesterday Southgate announced his latest England squad for the upcoming international break. Selected once more, and as Martin said, Phillips in there. Nothing against Calvin Phillips or Jordan Henderson or Harry Maguire, but we need to talk about them. On Phillips and Maguire, not playing for the clubs but playing for England, or certainly included in the England setup. What is this telling us, Martin? It's loyalty, yes, but is it misguided loyalty?
No, I think this is Gareth Southgate telling us that he believes in these players. It's far from ideal that Maguire and Phillips have not taken to the pitch really this season.
So he does, but why don't their domestic managers believe in them?
Well, I mean, you look at the competition that they're up against and the clubs that they're playing for. I don't think that the Manchester United defence has got any better. In fairness, it's Harry Maguire's not been in it. You could drive a bus through that Manchester United defence at times, and I think you're seeing that the midfield's just not really giving enough protection. So I don't think all week we should blame Harry Maguire. Maybe he looks a better player now he's not playing when you see that what they're having to deal with. So I think Southgate believes in him. I think that's right and proper. If you look at the other young central defenders that have joined the squad, there's hardly any experience there, Jim, at all, in terms of international experience. About 8 caps, I think, amongst those players. So he's gone for a list of your players. I mean, Dunk's come back in. Tamori, we know about, I think, 3-4 games for England. So there's not much in there. Colwill as well. So hardly played in the Premier League, Jim. It's a massive show of confidence to him. We know what a great talent he is. So he wants to bed in one of those players. And there's no Stones right now. There's no Mings. So I get it that he's had to put some youngsters into that defence.
So this isn't really a huge testament of the value of Harry Maguire. It's a lack of choice to some extent.
No, I think this is a proven player that's done exceptionally well when you think the time spent on the pitch in preparation for the last World Cup and for the Euros before.
But would you concur?
What time in the pitch, Martin? Would you that time in the pitch?
No, he's saying he didn't
exactly,
play a lot of time,
but he's done well.
He's still done well. He still excelled in Qatar. I'm not sure that's right.
Well, certainly in the Euros he did.
Yeah,
he made the team of the tournament.
I think he was playing a little bit more then, because at that time the pressure was building up from the Man United fans about the dissatisfaction with him. But would you concur with the view that in order to operate at your highest level, which you should have to do to be an international footballer, you need to be playing, otherwise you're not sharp, you're not fit, you're not in tune with everything. You don't get your best version of yourself by being sidelined and then only really getting a game time opportunity at international level. That's not ideal, is it?
No, it's not. But we've been here before with Maguire, and we're only 3 games into a season. And so maybe Gareth will see it, right, I can give him 2 games here now. 2 games back to back. The next one is against Scotland. Jim, that's 150th anniversary, as you know. That game's very significant as well.
Aye.
Bragging rights.
But isn't it about backside, about face, though, isn't it? Isn't it surely your domestic form that drives you into an international setup, rather than the history of your international performances that keep you there?
Surely that's the question,
Yeah,
Martin.
but Gareth wants to. He doesn't want to expose these young central defenders. He has no Stones to call upon. What's he to do? What will be the combination if he doesn't include Maguire?
So if Maguire doesn't,
he's trying to qualify for a tournament.
He doesn't get any more game time, then eventually he's going to have to play these younger players, and the quicker he gets them experience at international level, the better it's going to be for them. So what's the point of having a blocker in the middle of it like Maguire that might play in their place?
They will get that experience either side of him. Maguire, I assume, will play in both games, and somebody else, another, will play 90 minutes either side of him in those other games.
So it doesn't concern you too much that he hasn't been playing for his club?
What concerns me is qualification.
But he is included in the England squad.
I think Gareth's looking at qualification. Who are the players that can get him there?
Yeah.
By and large, when you look at the World Cup squad, there was only really Henderson that was over the age of 32, 33, coming up to. And if you look at it for this summer, the squad will be pretty well the same. But it's up to other younger players to break their way through. And there's an opportunity here for these young players.
Well, you mentioned Henderson. Now, Gareth Southgate, Simon, while Stuart were away, Gareth was in here. And I must admit, producer Luke, myself, assistant producer Joe, we had an hour with Gareth and we threw the kitchen sink at him.
And I thought he did very well.
I must admit, he stood up to everything we asked.
So he should. He's
he came
back
with. Didn't fudge a thing. But he has been something of a kind of statesman, if you like, on many issues in and around Qatar. And of course, one of those involved the One Love armbands, for example, which got a lot of media attention in Qatar. But then yesterday, when he was confronted by media questioning about Jordan Henderson, who's now plying his trade in Saudi Arabia with its own human rights issues there, Gareth got a bit prickly about being pushed on Henderson and Henderson's inclusion.
I don't really know why a player would receive an adverse reaction because of where he plays his football. That of course is a personal choice, but I think it's really difficult to. Yeah, I'm a bit lost really with some of the questioning, because you walk in to try and talk about a squad announcement based on football decisions, and increasingly we're navigating such complex political aspects that I'm not really trained to do. So forgive me if I'm stumbling a little bit, but I find it really a really difficult scenario to try and get right. We'll do the best we can, and we are trying to make the decisions on any number of reasons, but I have to pick a squad based on the players that we think can get us qualified for a European Championship, and that's why we've picked the squad we have. We have tried to be supportive, but I also accept that members of that community felt let down around the World Cup, and I do know that we're in a position where there might be a feeling we haven't done enough in certain situations, and if that's the case, then we have to accept that criticism. But it's not intentional that we would feel that we'd let down any of our fans. But it's these are all very complex situations that we're trying to do the best at navigating.
I found that strange, Simon, on 2 points. Number one, Gareth knew a question like that was coming. Yeah. Because he's included him in the squad. And number two, I'm confused that Gareth would say something like, it's really difficult, and I'm a bit lost with some of the questioning. How can he be a bit lost? Because he's included him and he knows where Henderson's playing.
Well, yes, of course, but I also can understand some of the things that he's saying, because the only thing I would suggest is that Gareth perhaps shouldn't have dived into some of the minefields with such gusto as he did. Because on a number of occasions he's had to find himself in a difficult situation. He spoke very robustly about Ivan Toney before he knew the circumstances and the full extent of what Ivan Toney had got himself involved in. And it is a minefield for them, because they don't really want to walk down this line. We saw they didn't really have the courage of their convictions when they wanted to turn around and wear armbands, and then they weren't prepared to take yellow cards for it. So their actual convictions weren't that courageous. So I would prefer they stayed out of it full stop. The problem is for Gareth is that, and don't take this as an assault upon the media don't want him to. They want to put those questions to him. So he either has to go straight out of the gate and say, I'm not asking these questions ad infinitum, whilst he's working for these sops at the FA, and we've seen what they operate like. They'll just run with the hare and hunt with the hounds. They'll come out with ridiculous statements saying that, Serena Wegman could be the next England's national team manager for the men's, because it's a politically correct statement to say in the face of a Women's World Cup, rather than say the reality of the circumstances, which is not right now, but maybe a long time in the future when the game's developed. So I can understand in the environment he's working in why he's forced by the guys that he's working for to address these issues, and then he can't win whichever argument he gives. He can't win. He didn't legislate for Jordan Henderson going to Saudi Arabia.
Do you feel, Simon, that he needs to be less open within these press conferences? Because he takes all manner of questions, doesn't he? He's a football manager.
Well, one of the strengths that Gareth has been able to achieve, and I think one of his biggest strengths, is the ability to be able to integrate the media into the framework of the national side in a way that encourages positive thinking and a better dynamic. Yeah. So with that has come this candour. Now, on the other side of that argument, now he's in a situation where he's approached things in that way, and now it's coming back round and kicking him up the backside. I think he should have kept his own counsel. I don't think they should have been so vigorous. There was no necessity for it. They're the England football team. He's the England football manager. They're going into a World Cup. We didn't need to hear some of this stuff just because there was background noise from people that wanted the footballers to say certain things. And he should have had a little bit more substance about him. But I also understand why he didn't. And now the irony of it is the dial's turned.
Yeah.
And now he's looking slightly, because he is looking slightly foolhardy, because he was vociferous about these things. He did have views about these things.
It's an impossible job, though, isn't it? So, he's trying to be all things to all men and to all women, isn't he? And therefore, you eventually upset somebody. And he was asked the question: was Henderson would get stick when he takes to the pitch?
Yeah. That
was the question that he was answering.
Okay, it was just that when he was in here, he seemed to answer the questions a lot more comfortably and confidently. But then yesterday, when you knew the question was going to come round
he can't
the
answer
corner,
it, Jim.
He found it difficult to answer.
But the reality of when he came in here, And the hypothetical situation of whether Jordan Henderson was going to Saudi and subsequently whether he was going to be picked for England is a much more easier question to answer than the pointed question of he's in Saudi.
That's a good point.
He's a hypocrite himself for the observations that he's made previously, because it now suits him to be in an environment that he's castigated previously.
Yeah.
And now the England manager's got to answer on his behalf, and he can't. The alternative is he bows to the pressure and says, I don't pick a player that I want to pick. And that's not an England manager.
No, that's right.
That's someone else working for someone else doing what they bid.
Here.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.